Well, how the hell are you? Welcome to Tampon Talk with Mary. It's good to be back. We just launched season 2, so that means hopefully an upgrade in our quality and production value. I'm trying my best. I've mentioned before I kind of do most of the stuff myself, so I'm getting there. Bear with me. So that's gonna mean like theme music and other segments and cooler guests, and there's a lot to look forward to. So thank you guys for bearing with me, and thanks for being so supportive. Lots of stuff in the works. Still hanging out with Jubilance. Those people are great. So you could still check them out. They're awesome. The reason I had to take a little bit of break is that I was, and still am, working on a project that I've written called Verdict. So that's taken up a little bit of my time, but I'm back. I'll throw some information in there as well, and then hopefully we're going to bring on some members of the team to come on the show and talk to you a little bit more about the project we're doing. I'm pretty excited about it, and I think it's pretty in line with the Tampon Talk agenda. So, yeah, stay tuned to that. But yeah, I think that's all I got. So, yeah, thanks for being around. And we'll see you on Tampon Talk with Mary. Hope you enjoy the rest of these episodes. So sometimes when I'll do the show, I'll make it sound like we were having a conversation, and then I just suddenly turn the microphone on. I'm like, oh, hello.
I love that, and but I love the one too where you yelled. your friend wasn't ready for that.
Well, here we are recording. So hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Tampon Talk with Mary. Welcome to the show that only airs once a month. Quick story, and this happened on my way to coming to see you. Is that this would be the second time for me removing a tampon while I was in a vehicle. Because I don't...
Dexterity. You need some dexterity.
Yeah. And it was funny because the first time it was on a metro, and there's like... That was horrible.
In public?
Yeah, and it was like... Because I left it in for like way too long, and I started getting like heat flashes, and I was like, I wonder... Oh my gosh, I've had this tampon in for like 11 hours, so I gotta...
On your way to toxic shock syndrome.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I was like, this is life or death. I gotta get it. So I like... I was wearing like a flannel, and I like put it over my lap. Yeah. And then I kind of just... The only person in the car or in the cart with me was like asleep in the corner, and I was like kind of just leaned and pulled.
And did you have to put a new one in, or was it...
I didn't put it in anyway. I was too scared. I was like, I'm just gonna let it happen.
I have to ask, where did you put the...
There was a little trash can on the metro, so I like walked over and like I had another piece of like food trash or whatever, and I just kind of threw it all in a big bunch. And then with this one where I was like, I had parked my car and I was like worried I couldn't get into the bathroom in Student Life, and I forgot there was one in here, and then I was like, oh shoot. So I like ripped it out, and then I put it in a like receipt paper and like found a dumpster.
You made sure that no one was walking by your car, or even if there was someone walking by your car, kind of...
There's a lot of levels to it.
Yeah, like the timing has to be right with people walking by, not peering in, and you, pants, and also pants. But you're wearing pants that are
right. If it's like if you're dealing with like jeans, that's a whole new thing. A skirt, easy, you know.
A skirt is easy.
Why
don't I wear more skirts?
Yeah.
But yeah, loose fitting pants.
Yeah.
I haven't done that. We've done a lot of camping and figuring out what to do with tampons after, but not in cars as much.
I don't think a lot of people have. I think it's just me being
courting the comedic experience, right?
It's all for the comedic portfolio, you know.
It is. Oh my gosh, you've opened up a wide realm for me of thinking through tampon terror stories. I have to say, I hadn't ever been asked for one before, but that is, You've got a whole repertoire if you've lived a while.
Yeah. And then, so people know your name. Let me introduce my guest I have on today is Professor Elisabeth Kramp. Nice for you to be on.
Thank you.
And then we met like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2017. It was I was working very part-time at JP Catholic, teaching a writing composition class. Everyone's very favorite class.
Right.
Right? That's the class that you can't wait to be in. And Mary Flynn not only was a great student in the course, but also approached me afterwards with 3D references, all written down, typed up, and said, I would love to babysit for you. And so thus began a good friendship.
Because I think there was a time when you had like all three of your like adorable boys like in the class.
They were in 10 weeks' time, of course, and having moved to a new area and not having family or babysitters on call. In 10 weeks' time, my children got sick multiple times, and so I had to bring them to return tests, and having sick kind of pitiful-looking children in the corner must have tugged on Mary's heartstrings. So that was that's where we met, and have since enjoyed talking about all sorts of things, including feminine hygiene.
Yeah. And then, what we had talked about earlier, but I do invite my guests to share either. Now, they could be a tampon terror story, could be a pad problem story, Diva Cup dilemma.
I wish I had a Diva Cup dilemma. I have a friend who said, I still don't know how she could do this. I have a friend who could, she swore, tip out, so sitting on the toilet or somehow being contorted in some way in the bathroom. She said she could, with her pelvis, tip out her Diva Cup, and then so it would be able to be, emptied, and without having to take it out.
What?
I really can't. I never got a chance to ask her, like, how did you do that? Can you show me how you did that? We weren't that close enough to really entertain that. But for me it's always been tampons, then pads, especially as I've gone. Once you've had children, sometimes tampons don't feel as comfortable. So my tampon terror story. I'm the oldest of two daughters. I have a really loving family. My parents are actually really easy to talk to about all sorts of things, all and sundry. At least at this point in my relationship with them. When I was a teenager, of course, teenagers are working things out for themselves, trying to figure out what you can be independent doing. And so I was a late bloomer, about 13 and a half, 8th grade. Most of my friends had gotten periods, but we were nerd girls, so we didn't talk about periods and boys a whole lot. We talked about, I don't know, theater stuff and horses. And I remember knowing that I had to figure out how to deal with my period the first time it came. Just feeling this, I have to do it privately. I have to figure it out. My mom has this great, on top of the piano, a little, it's not a vase, it's like a nice big sturdy jar with some branches that she decorates for Valentine's Day, for St. Patrick's Day, for Christmas, Easter eggs for Easter. So I think in the back of my mind, this unconscious worry that my mom would celebrate my first period, like with, I don't know, tampons and pads on the holiday tree. There was something like a worry about in a family that was pretty public about all sorts of rites of passage and celebrations. I felt desperately like I needed to be private about this and figure it out. So when you're reading the back of a tampon box, and it's got the little picture of inserting the tampon into your vagina, and then here below it says all the warnings about toxic shock syndrome, and how terrifying it would be if you had that. So I was just trying to figure it out from the diagram, and I chose the bathtub as probably the easiest place to clean in case I had any blood, dripping down.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember the pain of it. The more nervous you get, your whole body is too tense to deal with tampons, to enjoy sexual intercourse, all sorts of things. So So I just remember feeling like I was going to pass out because I was like trying to get it in, and having to take a few times of practicing. Right? You think about practicing riding a bicycle. You think about practicing drawing, but no one tells you you're going to have to practice with hygiene products because they seem, you know how to wash your face. You just do it. You kind of break down the steps and you see it. And so something about the drawing, the image, and the technical aspect, and not knowing my own body at that point, not knowing like what knowing terms, but it wasn't a part that I really knew of myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that when you were suggesting a tampon terror story, just that initial terror is the right word. Like, what do I do in this situation? And eventually, it took me a couple periods before of using tampons and pads surreptitiously without having to buy some before I told my Mom, I've had my first period, and she was glad to know it. And we did not have a celebration. We did not have anything hanging on the tree to mark my rite of passage.
But I love that was part of the fear, is that your period could possibly be celebrated. I feel like other people have like opposite problems where like they're either scorned for their period, but I think that's kind of touching in a lovely way. Yeah, have a period tree.
A period tree. And at this point in my life, I would really embrace that. But my 14-year-old self was shy about those rites of passage.
Yeah. I remember looking at that same diagram and missing, I guess, the picture where the applicator came out, and I just put the whole thing in there, and that hurt a lot.
Yeah, and then there are non-applicator kinds, and that is a different kind of tampon terror story. Of having like I forget the brand, OB.
Yes, I use them all the time now.
Yeah, of course, and the green versions of it, and you don't need a little cardboard tube, an extra part. Gosh. But when you're starting out, that's kind of Tampax. Tampax was the brand my mom bought, and you just use what you got. Use what your mom showed you was right.
Yeah, and it was funny because the ones my mom used to buy like Kotex.
Oh, Kotex. Yeah.
And theirs were like fat and wide.
Yeah.
And that was terrifying. I remember that. I was like, that and what?
No, and those are choices. When you go to the store and you're figuring out, do I need something that's maxi super max? Do I need slender? Like trying to figure out how much absorbency.
Yeah.
Things that a woman has to make the decisions, and people who are marketing these things, they can. I wouldn't say it prey on our fears, but the idea of I had a friend who her first period happened during biology class, and she bled all over the little stool, and so you don't want to have situations like that. It was a bio lab, and everyone remembered that story, and you don't want that to happen. That's one of the greatest fears.
But in terms of like what class that could happen in, I feel like that's still biologically appropriate to happen in a biology class.
She had no idea that she was helping everyone understand what a woman's cycle entails.
Well, since we're all here, let's get into what this is, and everybody come around, walk around.
And that's actually, I think, when I've, something Mary and I've talked about is the NFP cycle charting that I've gotten into over the last, I would say, since 2003. So that's like 13 years of trying to figure out my cycle, trying to know myself. And I'm still operating on like an AP Bio background of what my uterus, cervix, vagina, all these parts look like. And I realized that there's like these visual images that come from bio textbooks. But yeah, there's so much more information to learn about your cycle beyond what is taught in not just health classes, but biology classes.
Yeah, just your basic, like, because you're only going to get, like, the basics. And I had realized in, we had taken for context of people who are listening, is that, like, one of the classes at this particular university is marriage and family. Oh, yeah. So it involves just, like, family development, like, that kind of stuff. And there are so many people who didn't understand tracking, like, or not, like, the cycle tracking, or, like, not using birth control, but using the cycle method, because they didn't have a basic understanding of the biology.
Exactly. And I would say so many people don't. And one of the greatest misconceptions is that women are fertile all the time.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, is that it took me a while to locate that as one of my problems. It's like a fallacious thinking that a woman isn't fertile her whole cycle. There's only, during ovulation, during that sensitive period, and then of course the corpus dies, and then therefore you have your period. But in high school, I don't think there's a disconnect, especially because so many women students at that age are fearful of getting pregnant. At least in public school settings that I was in, are having sexual relationships and really terrified of pregnancy, and that's where I think making decisions to be on birth control because of not really knowing what a cycle is or entails.
And if you could, like, tell us a little more about, like, because we were talking, I guess, like, outside of the show, just your, like, opinion on birth control, and it's either, like, effects outside of what it literally does, but just how it's not necessarily, like, affecting a relationship, but how it, like, affected you. Could you, like, tell us a little bit about that?
Well, and I was 17, having terrible cramps. I was a cross-country runner, and so running would help me deal with some period issues, but then going for a first PAP and figuring out, okay, so I've got cramps, what does one do about that? I pretty quickly put on birth control, orthotricycline, which, the benefit is it's supposed to make your skin beautiful, and it's supposed to, if you're already on it, then you can start sexual relationships without any fear. But what they don't say is that there's fear already involved in your decision to go on it. Part of it, the fear of having cramps or of having rough periods, right? So, so many years later, now I'm verging on 40, and I can look back and say, a woman through periods, whether they're really difficult or minimal obstruction to regular things that you're doing, a woman learns a lot about her fertility and about how she'll cope in childbirth through monthly cycles. What's her pain threshold? What's her what are her coping mechanisms? What are her tendernesses physically? All of that's really important information, and you get to be a student of it monthly.
Yeah.
This is an interesting way to get in touch with your fertility. But so at my when I was 17, taking orthotricycline, I was on it until 2003, and at that point, I was just noticing that I felt, I've always been a writer. I've always liked drawing. I've always enjoyed being with other artistic peers, making things and curating art shows, making stuff. And but I noticed just that it felt like libido-wise and creativity-wise that something I felt stymied.
Mm.
So I was, without knowing what was the problem, and there was in me this impulse to get the heck off of birth control. I was reading books about health and well-being. I was trying to eat organic food, running, like trying to be healthy. I'd been a vegetarian for a long time, and learned to boycott agencies that I didn't believe were doing well ecologically, or corporations. And so I find myself, I've bought into this idea that the birth control is going to help me know, be able to plan for a period, help me cope with life. But I think the problem was that a few things. One, in deciding to get off of it, I was facing this question of what will it, like, how will I know when my period's coming? How will I won't have control over it. And what if I get these bad cramps again? What will that be like? And so seeing it as again, like an impediment instead of a way, like a good problem to have, where you get to know yourself by way of engaging with the problem. And I did have a longtime partner at that point who felt that I was, by getting off the pill, sabotaging a sexual life, a sexual relationship, which of course was death to that relationship. Like if it's seen as the woman's burden, the woman has to mute her fertility in order to have the relationship. That puts women in a, or I can't speak generally, but for me that was a real a muting, or something. I was saying, I need to get off of this, and the other person saw that as a threat. So I was reading, I was living in Iowa City. There was basically like a little feminist sex shop. I've been thinking, because of coming on the show, about where do we get our information? Like who is educating us sexually, health-wise, and a lot of, when I think of university towns that I've loved, Bloomington, Indiana, Iowa City, Iowa. There was a little place called Ruby's Pearl, and I was going there, walking by, and finding interesting literature. It's an aside, but I could see how one of the problems with NFP is that it tends to be, something that people who are involved in church, in our Catholic community, learn, but it's not in the public understanding, because it's not really, education centers aren't outside of the church.
Right.
So, but anyway, so going to this place, I came across Toni Weschler's book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility. So it's, basal temperature mapping and charting and figuring out when you're, where you are in your cycle, based on symptoms of temperature, and I'm trying to think of what others. Toni Weschler's is quite different than the Creighton method, which is what I use now. But yeah, so it was kind of an introduction to NFP by way of like a hippie feminist worldview, and then ultimately, in the process of becoming Christian and Catholic, coming to find the Creighton method, which really tries to incorporate a spiritual and emotional piece. But your original question about the pill, something I've never read about. I've only am going off of my own experience, but that the creativity being inhibited it's true that your libido is suppressed. The pill is not a friend to your libido. So the great irony is that you're
right.
taking the birth control so you can have sex, or for other reasons, but then you're not
libido.
able to have intercourse because the libido has shrunk. I had one friend who basically had a crisis every month, just an emotional crisis, thinking that her boyfriend was going to leave her, like having terrible fights with him, and then and it turned out that she was on a pill that was not a good one for her, like emotionally. But yeah, that question of how women know that our cycle is connected deeply to our creative work. So if you're doing something that suppresses the libido and something of your emotional, intellectual self, I think that my own music making and writing was a lot better or clearer or effusive after paroling myself from the pill.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, because at least when I'm like, say, acting or whatever, and a character has like a center, so where their gravity lands and like where do they lead from, and picking a place to lead from different in your body can evoke particular emotions.
Interesting, yeah.
And that the pelvis is an area you can lead from, and that invokes something. Yeah. And there were times when I was like playing a character that didn't move from that place, but when I was on my period, having to play a character that like that was so that area is so powerful, and it's like because your uterus and your brain are literally connected, and I think that totally makes sense.
Yeah, structurally as well as that's interesting, Mary. And I would be curious if there were other women who've written about this. I've had this pet theory for a long time, and have talked to women about it, but always to I hear agreement, but no one that I know of has really
written about it or anything
at length about it.
Yeah, it's and I think that even just and it stinks that in the context of your one relationship where that was the the make or break. And I feel like that happens for a lot of women, or at least other women that I've known, and it's I guess that it brings out the truth, but in like a horrible in a horrible way.
It's a destructive way in terms of the relationship.
Yeah.
So, and I've read that that the pheromones that you are attracted to are different than when you're on the pill than when you're not. And so maybe you're also attracted to men that you might not otherwise be attracted to if you're on the pill. I don't know how your own pheromones are changed, but but there have been some scientific research work on that is interesting.
And then that insight that you got just like being off the pill, and just like that reconnection with your body, how did that come into play when you started having like children?
That's a good question, and I think I've had to relearn about my period after each child. There's the lactation amenorrhea that happens, and so as I've been charting, I actually learned how to chart when my son was about 6 months old. So I was nursing full-time because he was a full-time nurser. I sat on the couch, read Russian novels, and nursed. And ate a lot of French toast, and that was kind of what I did in my first year post-pregnancy. And so, what's helpful about the method that I do, Creighton, you have a woman come to your house, and she teaches you, and she is a companion walking through it, looking at your charts with you.
Wow.
I don't know any other method that does that. The companionship in that.
Yeah.
I had this woman who was about, late 70s. She'd had 8 children herself. She came over, and I would see her once a month to look over my charts.
It's like a period fairy.
It is a period, like a fairy godmother. Like you know, especially after having children, for me, I was dealing with, I've always assumed that I would work at least part-time, you know, like there was an identity shift. Now I'm home with my baby. Who am I? This feels like the thing that I need to do. But there were a lot of questions that I had, and just the having a woman to talk to about fears of pregnancy again, the changes in my body, that was a great gift. So this woman's name was Mary as well, and she would come, and the only trouble is I thought she loved this method a lot. And so my gripes about it, here I can show you, it's like the ugliest system, these pictures. Maybe Mary can help me explain that this is not going to add to the beautification of your home. It's like this large calendar with all sorts of scribbling, and they call them stamps, these stickers of little white babies, little green babies. These are fertile days. Red stamps, they're red squares, rectangle stickers to indicate a period. Lots of markings. It's like learning a secret code to chart your period.
Yeah, I feel like this is the enigma.
Yeah, it is.
Like we're about to end World War II.
Yeah, crack the code. Can you crack the code? So you can figure out what your peak day of the month is, when you've ovulated, and all this good information. Well, I hated it because it was aesthetically not pleasing. I thought it was just the ugliest method I'd ever seen. And it took up space, and I forgot daily to do it, and so it felt like math homework that I wasn't doing very well. But when I shared that with Mary, the Creighton practitioner I was working with, she told me about times that she tore hers up, her calendars, and was so frustrated beyond belief about trying to do this. But it's like to have someone walk with you through the frustration of learning about yourself. That's ultimately what the project is, and learning how to communicate with your husband about your body. That's been one of the great gifts of it. That it says up front that that's what you're going to learn how to do, but figuring out enough about my cycle so that I can talk to my husband about it is a real help. But that, what was your question again? It was
like how did
children?
Yeah, like how that new knowledge you had about yourself like come into play when you started having kids.
It's not knowledge that you can hold on to, because it's knowledge that changes, and you change so much.
Yeah.
Through, I have 3 boys. The oldest is 8. The youngest is 3. Each child, I feel like I've changed a great deal physically, size-wise, health-wise, and then so the knowledge, it's not a knowledge base that you don't plateau in knowing this, but the having companionship along the way has been always been really important to me.
Yeah. And I think that's also great that you were like developing the dialogue to talk about it, because there's I don't know if you've heard of Clue. It's like it's a tracking app.
Oh yeah.
For I make my boyfriend like he can get connected to it, so he can just like also see it.
Yeah.
Like so now you know why.
Now you know why I've been acting crazy. Or we were talking before the show about I think fragile is a really appropriate word to use. Like that sensitive period before your period shows up is you do feel fragile. And, and to know that about yourself, and know what kinds of thoughts you have during that time, or what needs you have. Black tea for me, like I want cozy things and to be kind of warm, and once you, I think this is why women love talking to other women. So we need to figure these things out about ourselves and each other, and it does affect and help our relationships with men when we know ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And is there a grand takeaway that you want some young woman or man or anyone listening to get from your experience? Like,
yeah, a grand takeaway.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but
Well, that's helpful. Because I think I've been talking about the companionship, and when we stress that good communicating about ourselves, listening to others, this is a kind of a way of loving ourselves and others, like being merciful to other women, because we don't know what their periods are like to them.
Yeah.
But we know what it feels like to be in vulnerable, fragile places in our lives. So yeah, it's a work of mercy to grapple with the health and fertility problems that we have. To face them, even when we're afraid, to face them and to engage them, and it's for ourselves, our self-knowledge, but also as a way to know other people, to empathize.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because I mean, like that's the kind of stuff like actors will do, is like, how do I feel your pain, or like kind of relate on that level. So I think that's a really good way to put it in perspective, is that every woman has a period, and we've all experienced vulnerability.
Yeah, relationship vulnerability, physical vulnerability.
Yeah, I love that. And was there any, because I know that we were talking about you were working on your script, but is there any other, do you have any public writings that we can maybe read or anything?
I'm in the process, this is, I feel like a debut year. You have to take all of what I've been talking about with periods. Like, I have one friend who says God loves time, and it takes so much time to know yourself. It takes so much time as a writer to develop your work, but also to develop as a human being who has experiences worth sharing. So I just am finishing a first manuscript of poems called Lived as Diamond. I have a chapbook called Quickening that was released a long time ago, 2011. So it takes me a while to write poems, and my cycle is really important to writing poems, I notice. And then, I've got some plays and scripts that I am working on as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Nothing public yet. But...
Cool. Yeah, and then we'll just keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
Was there anything you wanted to plug, or any other anything?
No, thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was such a lovely episode, because you're just such a lovely person.
Oh,
I was like, I want listeners to know like how long we've been trying to figure out to make this episode happen.
Yeah, like a year.
I think so.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It took me I needed to listen to it so I could get a sense of what you were going for. But yeah, that's the excitement about being a mother, is that there's always something busy. There are always children to take care of and be busy with.
Yeah. Oh. And then listeners, if you, because I'm interested in the birth control theory. So if any of you have experienced something similar, please email me and I will share the findings. So the tampontalkwithmary@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook, Tampon Talk with Mary, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Tampon Talk WMary on both of those. I think those are all our things. If you want me on new things, let me know. Thank you to Jubilance for always being a friend of the show. Their discount window for their PMS supplement will be in the description of this episode. But yeah, so thank you so much for being on.
Cheers. Thank you.
And we will probably see a lot of you. Eddie, I open invitation if you have new findings about this Creighton friend, if you want to bring find them.
There are some other moms and women who I think would enjoy the work that you're doing.
Yeah, please get me connected. I'm sure that they would all make great episodes, because I know Megan, was gonna
Eccles. And she's also a writer, mom. I'm not sure in which order she would put that, mom writer mom. But yeah, a creative spirit,
And sounds great. Awesome. And then listeners, as always, thanks for tuning in. If you are a woman that is either thinking about going on birth control or not going on birth control, know your options. Do your research. And if you're someone who is in a relationship with that person, have some empathy, be understanding. Because we're all vulnerable, and that's the tea. that's the black tea. And this is always the worst part, is ending the episode, because it's like leaving a voicemail. And it's like, oh, it's horrible.
I leave wonderfully rambly ones too. And yeah, there's an art to it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to leave.
Yeah.
We like you, and we want you to stay.
Oh, but so we'll see you next time on Tampon Talk with Mary, and keep on bleeding. You got this. We're bleeding together. If you got to take your tampon out, take it out.
You got to.
You got it. Bye.
Bye.